Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be setting up my journal for the last month of this year, which is always so crazy to think about. But before we get started, I'm just going to do a flip through of my last month. And I really enjoyed this kind of witchy, sort of dark academia theme. And then for this month, I wanted to do something really cozy and wintry, but not necessarily Christmassy. So I chose some more muted colors this time, like this rusty orange as well as a grayish blue, and then these two green shades as well as a beige for some of the backgrounds. And then I also picked out these two brown tones for some of the outlines and a white gel pen for the titles. Starting off on the first page, I made my small calendar as always, and I used the beige shade first to make the background for the weekdays on the top, and then I wrote them with the dark brown. The days are 2 spaces wide, and then I wrote the dates with that same shade into one row, and I left one row empty in between them to create a bit more white space. Next, I used the two green shades to make some lines in between the weeks for a bit of color, and then I also used that orange shade to cross out the empty days. For the cover page, I wanted to draw this small cabin in the woods because it just felt really cozy and wintry to me, and I thought that was perfect for December. So I first just started out by making the outlines with the lighter brown shade, and this pen has a sort of flexible brush tip, so it makes it really easy to create thinner and thicker lines. The brown pen also ended up being pretty smudge proof, so that made it a lot easier to color it in later on. Now, in case you're in the mood for a cozy painting session, I recently uploaded a video where I painted a Studio Ghibli scene from Kiki's delivery service, so in case you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description, or you can also just click it in the top right corner on the screen. Next up, I went in with the fine liner tip of the darker green shade to create these hedges around the house that just make it look really nice and cozy and like it's really nestled into its environment. And I made sure to vary the shapes a lot, and then I also used it to create some grass blades here and there to make the scene look a bit more natural and also to make the edges look less clean. Next, I used that same brown shade again to create this pathway leading up to the house, and I first just made the outlines and then I added a bunch of little stepping stones in different sizes to create a bit more interest. For the background, I wanted to create some trees surrounding the house, so I used the dark green again, but this time with the brush tip side to sort of feather out these strokes and make the trees look really nice and bushy. I ended up adding 4 trees in total, 2 on each side of the house, and I tried to make sure that they're not all the same size, so some of them are a little bit taller than the others. And I wanted the overall shape to be pretty circular, so I tried to also overlap them a little bit so that they sort of fit inside that shape. To color in the house, I first went in with that light beige to color in the sort of main part of the house. And then for the roof, I went in with that sort of rusty orange shade, which added a lot of warmth to the scene, and I think it also was a really nice contrast to the green surrounding the house. I also colored in the door with that same orange shade just to tie everything together, and then I used the light beige again to color in the pathway in the front. For the grass and the bushes in the foreground, I used the lighter green shade, which is this sort of minty green, and I first just colored in everything and then I went over the bushes again to create a bit of a darker shade, which added a bit more dimension and also made the whole scene feel a little bit more like watercolor, which I was really happy with. Next, I used the lighter brown shade again to also color in the stepping stones in front of the house on the pathway. I also went over the lines for the bushes in the front with the dark green fine liner again just because they were a little bit too light, and then I added the darker brown for the trees in the background just to create a bit more detail, which is a bit hard to see on camera, but it definitely made a bit of a difference. I felt like the roof looked a little bit empty, so I just created some detail with the felt tip side of that same orange marker. And then with that grayish blue, I also added some smoke coming out of the chimney, as well as a few snowflakes to fill in the rest of the sky. Now, originally I was planning to just color in the whole sky with blue and then use a white gel pen on top for the smoke and the snowflakes, but I thought this version ended up looking a bit more clean, and I thought the grayish blue was a really nice contrast to the bright orange. Lastly, I just added a little bit more detail to the roof of the house with the light brown shade to finish off the scene. For the title, I wanted to use some brown craft paper, so I just cut out a small strip of it, and then I wrote December on top of it with the white gel pen. Next, I used this little tool to round off the corners of the paper, just because I thought it looked a little bit more fitting with the rest of the page. And then lastly, I just put some glue on the back to place it on the bottom of the page. And that is it for these first 2 pages, so let's move on to my habit trackers. For the title, I went for the same sort of style as for the cover page, so I just used some brown craft paper and then I wrote habits on top of it with the white gel pen. I rounded off the corners again, just like before, and then I just put it into the middle on the top. To decorate the sides a little bit, I added 4 little trees with both of the green shades, so the lighter green on the outside and then the dark green on the inside. And again, I just feathered out the strokes to make them look a bit more natural. And then I used the light brown again to add some little trunks. And then for the outlines, I used the dark green fine liner on top of the lighter green and the dark brown on top of the darker green. Lastly, I also added a few snowflakes with that grayish blue. For my daily habit trackers, I used that same sort of calendar layout that I've been using for a while. So I first just made some circles as a background for the weekdays with a beige shade, and then I wrote them on top with the lighter brown. Next up, I colored in the background for the dates on the bottom, so I used the orange shade for the ones that are from November and January, and then the light beige again for the rest of them. Each day is 3 spaces tall and 3 spaces wide, which perfectly fits onto the page. And then here, as you can see, I'm just creating the outlines with the lighter brown. And the way this calendar works is that you can color code each of your habits, and then every day when you complete a habit, you can just color in a circle or one of the squares with the according color. And you can also see what it looks like all filled in the flip through at the beginning of the video. Next, I also wrote down the dates with the light brown, and then I crossed out the empty days with the light green, and then on the side I just wrote down the weeks with the dark green. Underneath, I'm adding my color code for my habits, so I just chose some of the darker colors from the setup, and then I just wrote down which habits I want to track. So this month I'm tracking not using social media in the morning, getting some fresh air, cleaning up a little bit, and not using my phone before bed. All the way on the bottom, I also wanted to add my weekly habits, so I first used the dark brown to make some dots on the side, and then I used the light beige as a background for the titles. This month I'm going to be tracking making my weekly spreads, having a little self-care day, doing my weekly reset, and working out 1 or 2 times per week. And then to track them, I just make some circles on the side, one for each week, and then I just color them in when I complete them or cross them out if I don't. The other page will, as always, be dedicated to some planning sections for the month, so I first just created that same sort of title with the craft paper and then the white gel pen on top, and I just wrote down December and placed it into the middle on the top again. Next, I just decorated the sides the same way as for the habits, just to keep everything consistent and because I thought it looked really cute. I just added the same outlines again and then a few snowflakes to finish it off. As always, I'm going to be creating 4 sections for my sort of weekly tasks, and then also 2 for this month and then next month. So I first just colored in the background for the titles with the light beige, and then for the borders I alternated between the grayish blue, the rusty orange, and the light green just to add a bit more color to the spread. All of the sections are 10 spaces wide, and I left 2 spaces empty in between them horizontally. And then for the vertical axis, the sections on the top are 11 spaces tall, including the title, and the ones on the bottom are only 8 spaces tall, and then I also left 1 space empty in between the sections vertically. Next, I wrote down the titles with the light brown, and I just included week 1 and 2 together in one section, as well as week 5 and 6, because there's just a couple more days in each one. On the bottom, I just wrote down December and January, and then because I felt like those sections were a little bit empty, I also used the light beige to add a bit more detail. So I alternated between some thicker lines and then also some thinner lines to just fill in the sections a little bit and make them look a bit more interesting. Now recently I've been getting a lot more into painting again, so I've been really enjoying this class called Simple Steps to Create Vivid Art on Skillshare, who is also very kindly sponsoring this part of the video. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. They not only have classes on illustration, organization, hand lettering, and much more, but they also have curated collections of classes to master a specific skill, which are called learning paths. Recently, they've improved on their class categories and have also added new class topics such as creative careers and creative inspiration. Once you join Skillshare, you can select your interests, and from there you will get specific recommendations tailored to your goals. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today, and thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this part of the video. And that is it for these 2 pages, so let's move on to my first weekly spread of this month. First, I just created another title in the same sort of style as for the cover page, so with the brown craft paper as a background, and then I just wrote December on top in white. For this weekly spread, I just split the page into 8 equal sections, and for the first one, I just wanted to create a little mini calendar, so I used the beige on the top as a background for the weekdays, and then I just wrote them with the light brown again. I also crossed out the empty days with the orange shade, and then underneath I added a few trees to decorate the rest of the section. I added a few more snowflakes, and then I also outlined the section with the grayish blue. For my daily sections, I first colored in a circle on the top as a background for the weekdays, and then I alternated between the light and the dark green to add some trees on the sides to decorate the title a bit more. I went through that same process as before, so I just made the trees first with the markers, then I added a small trunk with the light brown, and then I used the dark green and the dark brown again to outline the trees a little bit. I also used the light brown for the title, so I just wrote the first letter of each weekday, and I also added a few more snowflakes with the grayish blue. I think in general I struggle a little bit more with winter themes just because there's not a lot of nature to take inspiration from, but this one actually came to me pretty easily. I pretty much knew what I wanted to do from the beginning, and I think it turned out really cozy and wintry, which I was really happy with. I'm not the biggest fan of super Christmassy themes, but I think they can also be really pretty, but I thought I would just do something a bit more like wintry instead of Christmassy. Anyway, for the borders, I switched between the darker and the lighter green, and I used the dark green where I placed the lighter trees and the other way around just to add a bit more variation and make the spread look a bit more interesting. Each section is 10 spaces wide, and I left 2 spaces empty in between them horizontally, and then the sections themselves without the titles are 13 spaces tall, so with the title they're 16 spaces tall, and again I left 2 spaces empty in between the sections vertically as well. Lastly, I just added the dates with the light brown marker again, and I just wrote them in the middle on the bottom of each section. And that is it for the setup, so let's do a little flip through. I thought this theme was really cozy and wintry and just exactly what I was hoping for, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this video as well, and let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and also leave any questions or suggestions in the comments. I always love hearing what you think. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!